Hello, everyone. Welcome, Mr. Smith here. I'm Roald Dahl, and I am reading an extract from this classic, Going Solo, written by Roald Dahl, and it's an autobiography. It's a sequel to the book Boy. Some of you may have read before. Probably books that are more appropriate for our upper primary students in stage 3, but absolute classics. And I know Miss Antonia can help you finding this book in the library if you're interested. Now, this particular passage is from a chapter titled Survival. It recounts the period where Roald is actually a fighter pilot, and I come dressed as a fighter pilot today myself. Fighter pilot in the Second World War, in the RAF, and he's shot down over the deserts of Africa, and he has to fight for survival. Dramatic period in the novel, and here's just a short extract from that. I hope you enjoy it. Survival. I flew straight for the point where the 80 Squadron airfield should have been. It wasn't there. I flew around the area to the north, south, east, and west, but there was not a sign of the airfield. Below me, there was nothing except empty desert, and rather rugged desert at that, full of large stones and boulders and gullies. At this point, dusk began to fall, and I realised that I was in trouble. My fuel was running low, and there was no way I could get back to Fuka on what I had left. I couldn't have done it in the dark anyway. The only course open to me now was to make a forced landing in the desert and make it quickly before it was too dark to see. I skimmed low over the boulder-strewn desert, searching for one small strip of reasonably flat land on which to land. I knew the direction of the wind, so I knew precisely the direction that I needed to take. But where? Oh, where was that one little patch of desert that was clear of boulders and gullies and lumps of rock? There wasn't any. It was nearly dark now. I had to get down somehow or another. I chose a piece of ground that seemed to me to be boulder-free. Boulder-free as I could possibly get. I made my approach. I came in as slowly as I dared, hanging on the prop, travelling just above my stalling speed of 80 miles an hour. My wheels touched down. I throttled back and prayed for a bit of luck. I didn't get it. My undercarriage, it hit a boulder and it collapsed completely. And the Gladiator buried its nose in the sand at what must have been around 75 miles an hour. My injuries in that bust-up came from my head being thrown violently against the reflector sight when the plane hit the ground, in spite of the fact that I was strapped tightly, as always, into the cockpit. And apart from the skull fracture and the blow pushed my nose in and knocked out a few of my teeth and blinded me completely for days to come. It was odd that I can remember very clearly quite a few things that followed in the seconds after the crash. Obviously, I was unconscious for some moments, but I must have recovered my senses very quickly because I can remember hearing a mighty whoosh as the petrol tank in the port wing exploded, followed almost at once by another mighty whoosh as the starboard tank went up in flames. I could see nothing at all, and I felt no pain. All I wanted to do was just to quietly go off to sleep and to be done with all the flames. But soon a tremendous heat around my legs galvanised my soggy brain into action. With great difficulty, I managed to undo first my seat straps and then the straps of my parachute. And I can even remember the desperate effort it took to push myself up against the cockpit and roll out headfirst onto the sand below. Again, I just wanted to lie down and doze off. But the heat close to me was terrific, and I had to stay where I should, otherwise I would have been roasted alive. I began very, very slowly to drag myself away from the awful hotness. I heard my machine gun ammunition exploding in flames and the bullets were pinging all over the place. That didn't worry me at all. All I wanted to do was to get away from the tremendous heat and rest in peace. The world about me was divided sharply down the middle in two halves. Both of these halves were pitch black, but one was scorching hot and the other was not. I had to keep on dragging myself away from the scorching hot side into the one that was a lot cooler. And this took a long time and enormous effort, but in the end, the temperature around me all became bearable again. When that happened, I collapsed and finally went to sleep. It was revealed at an inquiry into my crash held later that the CO at Fuka had given me totally the wrong information. 80 Squadron had never been in the position I was sent to. They were 50 miles to the south, and the place to which I'd been sent to was actually in no man's land, which was a strip of sand in the western desert about half-mile wide, dividing the front lines of the British and the Italian armies. I'm told that the flames from my burning aircraft lit up the sand dunes for miles around. And of course, not only the crash, but also the subsequent bonfire were witnessed by soldiers on both sides. The watchers in the trenches had been observing my antics for some time, and both sides knew that it was an RAF fighter and not an Italian plane that had come down. The remains, if any, were therefore of more interest to our people than it was to the enemy. When the flames had died down and the desert was dark, a little patrol of 3 brave men from the Suffolk Regiment crawled out from the British lines to inspect the wreck. They did not think for a moment that they would find anything but a burned out fuselage and a charred skeleton, and they were apparently astounded when they came upon my still breathing body lying there in the sand nearby. And when they turned me over in the dark to get a better look, I must have swum back into consciousness, because I can distinctly remember hearing one of them ask me how I felt, but I was unable to reply. Then I heard them whispering together about how they were going to get me back to the lines without a stretcher. The next thing I can remember, a long time later, was a man's voice speaking loud to me and telling me that he knew that I was unable to see him or to answer him, but he thought there was a chance I could still hear him. He told me he was an English doctor and that I was in an underground first aid post near Mertru. He said that they were going to take me by train and then to the ambulance and send me back to Alexandria. So there you go, a little extract from the book, Going Solo, written by Roald Dahl. It's quite an intense little passage, that, isn't it? But certainly a fascinating read, and tells the tale of Roald's life and his involvement in the Second World War. Look, I hope you enjoy looking at some of the other videos that are on offer today. Have a fabulous book week, and many thanks to Mrs. Antoniak and to Mrs. Rashid for putting together a fabulous program for today. Enjoy your book week. Bye for now.